Start tonight with an escalation in the Democrats' impeachment investigation for the first time ever today. Democrats taking formal steps towards impeachment. The House Judiciary Committee laying out specific procedures governing hearings moving forward. The House Judiciary Committee expected to vote on Thursday, calling it the, quote, next step. The resolution outlining 4 key changes to committee hearings. 1, it would allow Chairman Nadler to designate full committee or subcommittee hearings as part of the impeachment probe. 2, it would allow staff to question witnesses for an additional hour. 3, it would allow for secret grand jury material to be reviewed in closed executive session. Finally, it would allow Trump's counsel to respond to information and testimony presented in committee in writing. Now, Nadler is using the same outline the committee used in 1974 during the Nixon impeachment proceedings, and he says today it is the next step in the impeachment probe. This news coming as Democrats expand the investigation beyond Mueller, now investigating the hush money payments. Reports Trump dangled pardons to officials willing to break the law to implement his immigration policies, and whether his resort properties illegally profited from government business. Also today, 3 House committees announcing they are now investigating reports Trump and his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, pressured Ukraine's government to assist Trump's re-election campaign. All of this as Congress returns to work in D.C. after a summer of a growing chorus of pro-impeachment Democrats. Watch this.
I feel we can no longer wait.
I feel compelled to call for an impeachment inquiry against President Trump.
I do not come to this decision lightly.
The American people deserve the truth.
A majority of House Democrats are now on record publicly supporting an impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump.
That brings the number of House lawmakers backing impeachment to 135.
All right, joining me now is Elie Mystal, executive editor of Above the Law and a contributor at The Nation, Brittany Cooper, professor at Rutgers, and Nick Confessori, political reporter for The New York Times. Elie, I'm going to start with you.
Woo! It's happening. It's happening. I think that, look, I understand people were just like, go the Democrats.
You get to ask a question, Mystal, and you're already launching into it, but go ahead.
I understand that people are like, oh, the Democrats never do anything. I'm taking the Sam Seaborn approach. Let's ignore the fact that Democrats were late to the party and embrace the fact that they showed up at all. What we're seeing is the direct result of the people out there who pigeonholed their congressmen, who called, who demanded accountability, and now they've come back to work and they're starting to do something. The other person that you really have to give a lot of credit for today is Donald Trump himself, because his idiot strategy of completely unprecedented level of obstruction in terms of not accepting the power of the House Oversight Committee. It is what has forced Congress's hand. They are doing this not so much for the public, they're doing this for the courts. They're doing this because only clothed in the power of impeachment do they have the strength to force people like Don McGahn and Corey Lewandowski and all these people to give subpoenas. So it's really the kind of Fight Club situation where Donald Trump has spent the summer telling Democrats, I want you to hit me as hard as you can. And all that he's accomplished is hitting his own self in the mouth.
Let's not mince words, Elie Mystal. Brittany, give me your take on this, because we did hear from a lot of Congress people saying, okay, during this recess, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go home to my state. I'm going to talk to my constituents. I'm going to figure out what they feel about this impeachment proceeding, and then I'm going to tell you whether or not I'm going to move forward on it. So Elie here is making the argument that, in fact, they did just that, and here we are, come September, back to work, and they're moving forward, taking the next step, as Nadler said today.
Yeah, look, I think that that's right. I think my biggest concern is whether we can get to 218, whether these Congress folks who are in battleground states, who are red state Democrats, what that's going to mean in terms of how they will vote. Because the one thing that we can't risk here is like, if we're going to go for an impeachment inquiry, we have to go all the way. We have to win. We have to decide that we're going to impeach, or else this becomes the aftermath of the Mueller report, where everybody's all ginned up, and then there feels like it's anticlimactic. So that's one of the concerns. But look, I've said for a long time that Democrats have to get into the political theater of this. Donald Trump is beating us at every level simply because he controls the theater of it. We have got to look like we are fighting back.
So are you calling this political theater?
I mean, I don't think it's only political theater, but it's just like when the Republicans kept on repealing Obamacare, even when they didn't have the votes to actually pass the repeal. They kept doing it as a way to say to their base, we're fighting for you. And part of what Democrats need is for our Congress people to say, we see that this man is corrupt. You elected us in 2018, gave us the blue wave. No one said we could get because we're fighting for you.
So Nick, Brittany brings up a good point, and tell me if I am sort of not hearing you correctly. But there's this idea of being on the right side of history, and in various interviews that I've had about whether or not people feel like they want to proceed with the impeachment proceedings. Obviously, legislators in Congress. Oftentimes, I've heard that, I want to be on the right side of history. That's why I'm doing this. Do you think that is part of this calculus here with these Democrats moving forward?
Right now, this is an awkward time for the Democrats. Their base and their members think the case is already closed on impeachment, that there's enough evidence and facts and examples to impeach the president. But the leadership doesn't want it, and the public at large is not quite convinced it's merited. So I think what's happening here is, in substance, this move speeds up the process. It creates a framework and a process. It allows Nadler to spread the work of the committee among subcommittees, spread witnesses around, bring staff in the discussion. So it is a way to move forward more quickly. And I think that they hope that the politics will take care of itself.
Let's talk Pelosi here, though, because as we are having this conversation, Ellie, Nancy Pelosi still very much, Speaker of the House, still very much does not support moving forward with impeachment proceedings, despite the fact that she feels as if the president is guilty of many of the things that he is being accused of by the House Judiciary Committee. She still doesn't necessarily support moving forward with it.
Yeah. That's gonna
really? Nothing to say?
That's gonna be her problem ultimately, right? Like, that's gonna be her cross to bear, because the base of the party is leaving this barn without her. And if she wants to be the person standing at the end of Animal House saying, nothing to see here, all is well, like, she can be that person, right? She can put her finger up.
Do you think that's the message she's trying to send, though? Nothing to see here, all is well? I mean, that's not necessarily the message that I'm hearing from Nancy Pelosi.
But go ahead. But I don't think that Pelosi wants to get out in front of this, but the party has left the barn.
I think her calculation is wrong. I think she's using the Clinton model, and I think it's closer to the Nixon model. So the thing about Clinton was that the country watched that and said, back in an era before Me Too, there was no real sort of moral framework for pushing Clinton out of office because he had an affair, right? So there wasn't a lot of actual political sort of impetus behind that. So it seemed like a clear, calculated move on the Republican side. Whereas here, everyone, even Republicans, are looking at this president and going, it's a train wreck. It's a train wreck. We need to be saved from it. Trump's support is not going up. His base has stayed the same. And so part of what the party has to do, the Democratic Party, is energize its voters. Pelosi keeps using a sort of old political model, and it's wonderful when she can do it in terms of like keeping him from giving a State of the Union address. But I actually think that she is not in line with where the party is moving.
Okay, so Brittany's talking about energizing the voters, right? Energizing the Democratic base. But what about the argument about wanting to protect certain people that could help win this election come 2020, making sure they don't alienate certain voters come 2020?
It's a good argument. First of all, the base is motivated.
Right.
You cannot find a Democratic prime voter who is not super excited to go out and vote against Donald Trump. And so I think her calculation is, will impeachment help or hinder the effort to get him out of office? I suspect she would rather have him beaten at the ballot box than have an impeachment vote that succeeds and fails in the Senate and gives him some juice. I'm not sure if she's right or wrong there, but that's her calculation, I believe.
Before we go to Eric Swalwell, quickly, Ellie, I just want to go to you on this simple question. How significant legally is this step in the impeachment proceeding?
It's huge for two reasons, and very quickly. One, as I already said, the Democrats are right now in the process of suing in the federal courts to make Donald Trump's people testify, something that Donald Trump has unprecedentedly refused to have happen. When they clothe themselves in the power of an impeachment inquiry, that gives them more strength to go into court. So that's huge, number one. Number two huge thing is, as we saw in these rules, he's going to have now 30 minutes. These witnesses are going to have 30 minutes of being questioned, not by Congress people, but by actual lawyers and actual attorneys. And that's going to put their feet to the fire in a whole different way than we've seen before.
All right, joining me now, Congressman Eric Swalwell, who sits on the Judiciary and Intelligence Committees. Congressman, you have heard this very animated conversation, to say the least. I'm sure you did. Come Thursday's vote, what are you expecting to happen?
We're going to have more tools to move forward in holding this president accountable. And just to, I enjoyed the conversation, and I'll just add this analysis. I believe, one, there's only been 3 impeachment proceedings ever in the history of the country. This would be the 4th one. The other thing we know is that no 2 so far have ever been alike. I would describe this as a bottom-up impeachment investigation, meaning that it is unlike the Clinton impeachment, where it was top-down, led by Newt Gingrich. This is being led by the members of the committee, and impeachment is one of the remedies for a lawless president, and it is something that could be recommended to the rest of the House. But I don't think you can look at prior impeachments to inform us on this one. No 2 are alike. We at least know that.
So there is this concern, Congressman, that by moving forward with these impeachment proceedings, you are ignoring some of the kitchen table issues that matter to voters right now, gun reform and health care being top of mind, especially in the lead up to 2020. Can Congress walk and chew gum at the same time?
Yes, my life would be a lot easier if we were ignoring those other responsibilities. And I can tell you tomorrow we are going to have hearings on the Judiciary Committee on getting rid of forced arbitration clauses. We're going to have legislation on gun violence. And then 2 days later, we're going to have a hearing on this impeachment resolution. So we're doing a lot. We recognize that this is not the only issue people care about, but also that unless you hold this president accountable, 2 things will happen. 1, he will get worse, as we see. And 2, future presidents will see the standard of conduct of which they will be judged for impeachment will have been lowered.
It's interesting, Brittany, because you brought up the question of how do you get to the number of 218?
Yeah.
Right? So, Congressman, I pose that question to you. What is your plan to get to 218?
Well, you've seen courageous colleagues of mine like Lauren Underwood and Katie Porter, and if they were just, political weather vanes, they would cautiously, avoid holding the president accountable. But I think they sense that how can you not support having an impeachment inquiry with this president? If you don't do it with him, who would you ever do it with? And so I think they are models for others who are still considering it. And I don't think the number of people supporting impeachment will go down. It's only going to continue to go up.
So what's the timeline here, though, Congressman? Because we are approaching primary season very quickly. And at one point, the focus will have to be very much so on the 2020 election.
Yeah.
Will there come a point where you say, OK, we have to put this aside?
So next week, we will have Corey Lewandowski before the Judiciary Committee, and what you will hear from his testimony is that the president asked him to go to Attorney General Sessions and essentially end the Russia investigation. So I think seeing is believing, and having these witnesses not just, reading what they said in the Mueller report, but having them up front and personal for the American people to see will continue to build support and let the reality set in for the American people that this is a lawless president, and it's just not how we do business in the United States, and there has to be accountability for lawlessness.
Congressman, you heard Elie Mystal saying he doesn't necessarily agree with Speaker Pelosi and her position with regards to impeachment. Have you spoken to Speaker Pelosi on this next move, on this Thursday vote? And where does she stand on this as of now?
So I'm headed right now to a meeting, a leadership meeting. I'm on the leadership team, and I expect this will come up. But again, she said earlier today that.
What do you expect to hear from her? Yeah.
I think she believes that impeachment is one of the remedies for the president's conduct. She wants to see the public support build. Again, it's like a catch-22. The only way to build public support is to have hearings. We're going to have hearings.
All right, Congressman Eric Swalwell, Brittany Cooper, Nick Confessori, thank you. Elie Mystal, you're sticking around.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.